this session, I'm going to give you a little bit of information on who we are. We're going to talk about the issues that autistic job seekers face. We're going to look at, well, what are the challenges with the traditional recruitment process and how can we do it differently? So we're looking at the way that we do it here at Specialisterne, and that is through the training and assessment. Also talk about during that training and assessment program, the employer interaction that we have. We'll look at some of the jobs that we've secured in the past. We'll also talk about the employers that we've worked with in the past. And there's always employers that are joining us and we'll also look at those types of roles. So Lizzie brought up a really good point about, yeah, but the visual arts degree, and I have those transferable skills, but how that arts degree isn't necessarily recognized. And I'll talk about the candidates that we've hired into certain roles that haven't had the qualifications, they've had the skills. So I'll talk more to that, Lizzie, when we get to that section. Some upcoming opportunities that Kate's involved in, and most importantly, how to participate. We want to hear from you guys. We want to know that you're out there and we want to connect with you. So we'll give you some ideas, instructions on how to connect with us. All right, so Specialisterne, who are we? So Thorkild Sohn, he's Danish, and he started the organization in 2004. He is his organization that he started is behind the Autism at Work and the Autism Advantage movements around the world. So you probably have heard of him. We can thank Thorkild Sohn for that. So Thorkild's son was diagnosed back in 2000, Lars, and what compelled Thorkild to start this organization is that he started reading all the material out there about the prospects for his son when it comes to employment and the future opportunities for Lars. He realized we're actually quite limited by society, by employers. But what at the same time, he started realizing that the prospects are awful for his son, Lars, yet Lars had these amazing strengths and capabilities. He was looking at the way Lars would hyper focus on the task at hand, the way that Lars, his method, the way that he had unique problem solving skills, and it just wasn't balancing. Why are the jobs not out there when his son has these skills? And he, as an executive in the telecommunication industry, realized that, but those are exactly the skills that we are recruiting for in telecommunications. So that compelled him to start his organization. It's now global. Specialisterne has chapters in the US, Canada, Austria, Brazil, Italy, Ireland, UK. So it's a global organization, but we've only been in Australia since 2015. And again, it goes back to that focus of not focusing on the disability, but uncovering those unique skills that, and like you were saying, Jonathan, that vary on the spectrum, but finding that person's particular skills and capabilities and how those skills can be used in different organizations. So you'll notice that our logo is the dandelion, and Thorkild looks at the dandelion as society sees the dandelion as a weed, yet what we forget is when cultivated, the dandelion is actually quite beneficial medicinally, as well as nutritionally. So he wanted to shift those perspectives and look at when the dandelion is given the right conditions, it thrives. So looking at how organizations can shift, organizations can create an environment if they change their mindset in the way that they do things to allow autistic candidates to not just participate, but to thrive. So that's why we exist. Our goal here in Australia is to create 12,000 jobs by 2030. And it's not just about placing autistic candidates in roles. It's about working with businesses to not only realize the autism advantage, but to be able to support autistic workers, to know how to work with people on the autism spectrum and to support them, to get the most out of them. So I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, because those of you that are joining us and you're looking for employment, you know what the statistics are. But the also, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this later, but is it that, what is the unemployment rate here in Australia is 34% for people on the autism spectrum. Half of those people on the spectrum would probably meet the criteria for anxiety and depression. One thing that we've realized and that we've seen anecdotally is that once people are actually placed into meaningful employment, that helps with their sense of belonging and also has an impact on their mental health as well, positively, when they're in an environment that recognizes their skills. So we know, and Beck, you were talking about this because you're in a graduate program. We know that autistic job seekers tend to be overeducated and underemployed. We know that 50% of them say that they're in roles that are below what they're capable of. So that's what the statistics say. Who's good at math out there? I'll give you a little trivia question. So if the prevalence rate is 1 in 54, how many autistic Australians are there if the population is 25 million? Anyone want to gather? Anyone want to have a bet? Go ahead and type it in. But what is the problem? Why is that unemployment number so high for people on the autism spectrum? It's 3 times higher for the rate for people with a disability, and it's 8 times higher than the population in general. Why is that? We know you guys have skills and capabilities, and it comes down to that traditional recruitment process, the interview, which relies on you selling yourself, which relies on you developing this rapport with the interviewer. It has a large emphasis on nonverbal language. And again, it requires you to sell yourself. And here's an example. We've just had a candidate that we've placed. In his initial application, we asked him, why would you be the best person for this role? And he responded, I'm not. Which, he wasn't going to sell himself to us in that initial phase. We had to uncover why those skills that he has makes him the best candidate for that role on offer. So we had to work with him to show him, not just the employers, but we also work with the autistic candidates to uncover those skills. Kate will talk more to this in session 2. But another challenge with the interview is it requires you to verbalize quickly what you're good at. They'll give you a scenario and you'll have to say, oh yeah, I can do that because. So it requires you to immediately express and demonstrate and verbalize your skills in that particular scenario. And also in the interview process, and we should say the job advertisement process, it doesn't really give you a lot of information on the role that they're looking for. What are those tasks in those roles? And it doesn't necessarily give you that information. So a lot of times, autistic candidates might look at the advertisement and go, oh, I'm not an excellent communicator, and dismiss themselves from that role because of the way that role's written. What are those skills that are really needed for that role? That's what we try to uncover. So if we know that there's these challenges, why do employers still use the interview process, the resume process? And the reason is because it's quick, it's habit, it's what they've always done. But the other reason, and it's an unfortunate reason, is because then they can see you and see whether or not they connect with you. And we know evidence out there suggests that interviews are rampant with unconscious bias. Interviewers are going to hire people that look and sound and act like them unconsciously, sometimes consciously, but it does exist. And it puts autistic job seekers at a huge disadvantage. But they use it because it's what they know, it's what they've always done. It's quick. Our programs last between 2 to 4 weeks long. A lot of employers aren't willing to sign up and commit to 2 to 4 weeks to find the right candidate. So it also, interviews and resumes allow for this side-by-side comparison with other candidates. So you're competing and they can immediately make those judgments and side-by-side comparisons, especially with the resume, doesn't have this qualification, has this qualification, and it's looking at those qualifications as opposed to skills. So that's the problem with traditional recruitment. And this is sort of why we exist. So I'm going to go ahead and share with you Sam's story. So Sam went through one of our programs. He's now with IBM in, where is it? It's not Bendigo. What's that other town? Ballarat. And I'll just share with you his story. And this is reason why we exist.
Hey, y'all going? I'm good. At the moment, I start the day at 9 a.m. I do some work until 9:30 when I have my daily meeting with my team. We'll discuss what we've got on for the day. It's been a bit annoying trying to do remote work on a Windows computer. My name's Sam Castleman. I'm a blockchain developer at IBM here in Ballarat, and I am on the autism spectrum. If you ever come back to the exec dash, the mobile app's written in React Native now, so you might actually be able to help. So my opportunity with IBM started with a hiring program I found about through a friend.
3, 2, 1, go.
I just applied, not expecting too much, and eventually I was one of the 10 offered the final position.
And we'd like to offer you a job.
I'm not sure what to say.
That's all right. It's been 11 months since Sam joined us at IBM.
Really keen to actually get back on it with a good idea this time. I'm doing stuff in React.
Sam has really grown in his confidence, and he's so appreciative and he so values the fact that he can now contribute to the world. He's brought in some different ways of thinking.
It seems simple enough at first, and then it's like, oh, it's actually in like this totally different class. Oh, we shouldn't be using. Before working at IBM, I hadn't actually had any proper employment, and that wasn't for lack of trying. Being on the spectrum carries a lot of stigma. I handed out over 150 resumes across Ballarat and Melbourne looking for any work, and of the few interviews I actually got, none was successful. People on the spectrum, or people with neurodiverse conditions in general, have unemployment rates up to 70%, and that does come down to an inability to perform standard tasks in a way expected of employers. I've got a couple of PBIs to finish before I roll off Friday.
Well, the first one was the girls the morning of the wedding.
I think everything since about 3 years ago has been totally different to what I ever expected. So this time last year, Carly was my fiance of 1.5 years, and after joining IBM in November of last year, we finally got married. And that was hugely due to the financial stability provided by my job, as well as a general mental health increase.
Oh no, it would be such a shame if someone was to knock down my house.
Look out! So particularly post-COVID, things have been very different. I'm working from home and have been for a few months now. And it's been really good to be home with my family more. My daughters have been very happy to see me for most of the day now. There we go.
Where does this person live, Zella?
Since Sam got the job, it's been a bit of a whirlwind. So many things have happened and he's changed in so many ways.
Oh no!
He's extremely focused. So if he finds something that he is passionate about or he clicks with, you won't be able to take him off it until he figures it out. It is He's one-track mind. He can get it done.
In terms of Sam, it's a very bright future. You know, to see those things quite quickly change over that period of time, that's what employment does. It gives confidence to come out of themselves, push their limits, and really be feeling part of society.
Didn't we go to the shop yesterday?
So I think the biggest lesson to take away is to embrace who you are. We may not be able to perform the same tasks as neurotypical people, but that's okay. And as the world comes to understand us and accept us more, you know, there's value in what we can do. And it's just a matter of time until you find the right place, the right people who accept you for who you are.
Not today, darling.
Right. So that's Sam's story.
Hi,
Let
I'm
me
Lisa
get out of
Ailes.
this
Thanks for watching this story.
before.
And was
There we
the
go.
girls the morning of the wedding.
Okay. Let me go back a few slides. And I apologize for, I'll get there. Trust me. No, it's going too fast. Okay. So in order for us to achieve our goal of 12,000 careers by 2030, again, it goes back to that focusing on both groups. So we don't just place autistic candidates. What we do is we work with those employers and industries. We remove that divide. We create that awareness. So we realize, and Thorkill, that was his mission back in 2004, was to not try and make autistic candidates neurotypical. It wasn't the autistic job seekers that needed to change, but it's the way that the labor market works. It's changing that traditional recruitment process. And we do that through education and awareness. But businesses, again, it's that fear of the unknown. And Jonathan, you alluded to this. It's that, as well as a few others who have said that once I've disclosed, it wasn't too favorable. The experience that they had wasn't too favorable. And that is because they don't understand, they don't get autism. They don't know what they can do. Sometimes it's slight accommodations that people are asking for, and it can make a world of a difference when you're on the spectrum. So it's working with those employers and dispelling the myths and showing these accommodations, these changes that they can make within their organization to better support and include autistic workers. So how do we do that? Well, we aim to enable employers to support neurodiverse employees. We create training for the entire organization, again, debunking those myths and common misunderstandings. We conduct autism awareness trainings, and then we look at common challenges that autistic people may have, and we look at the strategies that you can unroll in an organization that are going to better support a person on the spectrum. We work directly with the managers and we give them that specific training. We set up each employee with a buddy or a mentor. So someone that they can go to that not only gets autism, but they can go to and ask questions, the unwritten rules within the organization. They can ask questions to their buddy without without that fear of judgment. And it is quite, Beck, it is quite liberating to go to an organization through a pathway program that that understands or is willing to learn more about autism. So many people have been fired because they don't fit, they're not a cultural fit. And it's taking away that ignorance. And yeah, you know what? You might not be the person to chat at the water cooler. You might not be that person that you know, wants to go out for drinks on a Friday night and talk about random things. But that doesn't mean that you're not good at your job. That doesn't mean that you can't do the role just as well, if not better than other people. So we're working with employers to recognize that. Each employee has a support plan. We work with the employee to create that support plan, and that support plan not only talks about the candidates, and this is where we start, their strengths and their skills, but it also talks about sensory sensitivities they may have. It tells the employer, you know what, so-and-so cannot focus if there's a lot of background noise going on. So he needs or she needs to use noise canceling headphones, or position their desk away from the kitchen, position their desk so that they can get natural light as opposed to fluorescent lighting. It also talks about the way that that person, not everyone, that person in particular processes information. Are they a visual learner? We've just placed a few engineers into IT roles, and their way of learning is, if there's a manual there, give them the manual. Don't just talk to them, verbally explain it. Give them a manual. He wants that manual that he can refer to later. And then we also we meet regularly with the manager as well as with the candidate, and we discuss ways that can better support them, ways that the manager can better explain tasks, etc. So we focus mostly on the organization and upskilling the organization. We're not there to change autistic people. We're not there to make autistic people fit into the corporate culture. We're there to say they've got these skills and this is how they can best demonstrate and contribute to the team. So again, there was a few statements earlier about, oh yeah, but the diversity and inclusion, it's really geared towards other groups, not autistic job seekers. But what we're finding is that we're getting more and more inquiries. Businesses want to know, well, what other roles would be suitable to a person on the spectrum? So we're answering those questions, and we're helping businesses see that there's roles in, Kate was just working, placing people as lab technicians, financial analysts. There is no particular role that an autistic person can't fill. It's about finding what skills that particular autistic person possesses and finding roles that would best suit those. So each person, I know, Jonathan, we talked about this, is different, and there's those assumptions that everybody on the spectrum is really good at remembering facts and details. No, we know that's not the case. So those 4-week programs, 2 to 4 week programs, work at finding out what your skills are. We know that research shows that, and our own research shows that when we've placed neurodiverse candidates, the retention rate is higher than neurotypical, especially in the IT roles, because once they feel safe and supported, autistic people aren't going to just leave, they're loyal. But that 4-week program is about understanding what skills you possess and how those skills can be best used. So our alternative pathway is that we use this unique and patient approach. So 2 to 4 weeks, depending on the program. That's why a lot of businesses don't modify their recruitment processes, is because it is time consuming. To find out what you're really good at and what skills you have takes time. A resume doesn't cover that. And in fact, a resume can be full of crap. A resume doesn't prove what you're good at. And so these 2 to 4 week programs are about you demonstrating your skills. And in that program, we find that candidates develop a bit of confidence too, because they are in a program. It might be a program of 12 people, it might be a program of 16 people, but they're in a program with like-minded people developing and uncovering their skills. And like Nat was mentioning, that a result of these programs is that they often develop social connections outside of the roles and connect externally outside of the workplace. You're able to demonstrate your skills to the employer. You don't have to sell yourself. Lizzie, your question was about the visual arts. So some of the people that we've just placed in Melbourne, for example, one of the candidates has a degree in biology. He's actually now doing he's a test analyst with the ATO. So it's not your qualifications that we look at and that we promote. We promote the skills that you've demonstrated. But also, you're going through a pathway where the businesses and the hiring managers they want to know about autism. They want to know, what can we do? We want you on our team. What can we do to better support you? So they've committed to these programs. With the federal programs, so we've run, Kate, correct me if I'm wrong, but we've run programs over the last 2 years, ABS, ATO, Services Australia, I think total 6 federal programs. So they've done it once, and now they're coming back and saying, let's do that again. We've had such success.
And if I can just jump in for one moment, Michelle, it's also important to, I guess, mention, obviously there's success because they've done repeat programs. I haven't got the exact stats, but I think our success rate measured, and you might talk about this later, over a 12-month period, and that is that the employees that we've engaged with are still working, is sitting around the 96%, and we've held that now for about 5 years. So not just do these organisations come back and do repeat programs, but those individuals that we place are still, working in those roles. In some instances, they've progressed upwards or sidewards, but I think that also speaks volumes, because I guess our approach that Michelle's talking about is successful because it is a longer. We take quite a lot of time compared to, I guess, other providers, but we get it right. We place so much importance on getting that cultural fit right, and we won't put you into a role unless we think you're going to succeed. And likewise, we make sure that the culture within that organisation is ready to support you as well for that long-term success.
Yeah, precisely. Thank you, Kate. And that goes not just for our federal programs, but Kate's about to launch a program with one of the big 4 banks. This is the second time that she's worked with them. They've come back, they've done an external review and realized how successful that program was. So it wasn't us telling them, and it wasn't just the candidates. They actually hired a third party to review the program and said, oh yeah, you should be doing this again. It's been so successful. With the training in a program, so the starting place is we work with the employers. The employers tell us about the roles, and then we dig a bit deeper and we say, okay, what are the skills that you really need in that role? We then work with the employer to create assessments that are going to test or show those skills that they're looking for. So as I mentioned, the programs range in length. So the one that Kate's going to be delivering in the next few months in Sydney, it's going to be a 2-week program. The federal programs tend to be 4 weeks. And because of COVID, we've now have gone and delivered them virtually online. But that's actually been fantastic. So Beck, we had this conversation in the earlier session where employers are less hesitant now and are more willing to consider remote and flexible work because of COVID and this need to work remotely and online. In that program, we've been able to do that as well. So fingers crossed, employers will be more willing to consider flexible work arrangements where it may be one day working from home, etc. So the assessments vary depending on the roles that we're recruiting for. In the past, pre-COVID. We've always used Lego Mindstorm as a way to, I guess, demonstrate problem solving, coding, ability to test and find solutions. Because we've moved online, we've had to look at other ways of assessing those skills. For example, we work with the employers. So if it's for analyzing data, the employers may give us a huge data set, and the candidates using SQL or even upper level Excel analyze that data. They're giving a set of tasks by the employer, and then they show and explain their approach to solving that. So it's also business specific problems. So one of the organization puts together a problem that they, thinking of ATO, a problem that they had previously, and then they ask you to collaborate in a group and think about ways that that could have been solved differently. And each program, all of our programs, you have an opportunity to present to the employers each week. You have a challenge each week, and individually and group, and you present that to the employers. So that leads to the employer engagement. And this is one of the things that the candidates actually say is most beneficial, is that they get to meet their potential future managers. They get to meet with their organization. Pre-COVID, the training and assessments were usually held on site. So a candidate could kind of experience what a day in the life would be like in that environment, because they were actually physically there. They could see whether or not, most government buildings have open plan, and they got to experience what that would be like. They got to experience, for example, stand-up and how a team does their daily stand-ups, and got to participate in that. But I think the most important part is that the engagement with the employers allowed the candidates to then kind of change that paradigm, allowed the candidates to ask the employers, what is it, what's your team like, what's the work environment like, what are the roles, the tasks that you would do on a day-to-day basis. So that engagement that we have and that commitment that we have with the employers is quite unique, and their involvement has been extremely important. And in fact, I'll use an example of we ran a program, 2 federal agencies together, and Nat was mentioning this earlier, is that the agencies were competing for certain candidates that were able to demonstrate those skills. And often the candidates would choose to go with the agency that maybe had developed a better relationship within the 4 weeks. They were present longer. They were able to answer questions that the candidates had. So it kind of shifts the tables a bit. So the types of roles. So since 2015, we've worked to place 405 candidates. We have trained over 4,400 managers, and Kate alluded to this. We've had a retention rate for the candidates placed of 96%. So that's huge in the IT sphere, and just phenomenal in regular recruitment in general. 96% is amazing. So the roles in IT support, data analyst, cybersecurity, programming, test analyst, they range and they vary, and each recruitment round is different, the roles that we're uncovering. Admin and professional, we've hired intelligence analysts that are looking for fraud, records management, risk analyst, lab technicians, project officers, financial analysts, and even into agriculture. We worked with Sunport to place candidates looking after measuring quality assurance within a piggery, and looking at looking after the well-being of those animals. So again, it goes back to that misconception that autistic people are only good at IT roles. That's not the case. We uncover those skills and we look at where those skills, they're transferable skills. What other industries can we tap into and demonstrate that you're missing an opportunity here? So these are some of the employers that we've worked with in the past. Government, a good balance of both government and private industry. Kate's just run a huge program with the New South Wales government, and real diverse roles, project officers, IT roles as well, but financial roles. So there was such a range within that recruitment round. And again, it goes back to, I'll use one example of a candidate that we've just placed. This gentleman, I'm thinking, I can't say the name. I'll say John. John did not have any formal qualifications, and it was probably because of lack of opportunities. Migrating to Australia, it could have been financial circumstances that prevented him from gaining qualifications. What he did have was this intense interest in self-directed learning. And for fun, John would take IQ test and always building his skills independently. We've just placed him in a cybersecurity role, and he's let me just say, people with a master's degree would be very happy with the wage that he was offered, the salary he was offered. And again, he did not have any formal qualifications. He had a few Cert 3 IT qualifications, but it was because, and in fact, he went up against another autistic candidate in the assessment program who did have all those qualifications, but he was able to demonstrate his problem-solving skills. He was able to explain how he went about solving that problem, and it paid off. I don't know, Kate, if you wanted to say any more about that particular candidate, but
for me, what really impressed me, I mean, I think Michelle's highlighted it really well, but what particularly impressed me, and I know the hiring manager fed back, was this individual's motivation. So he wasn't pretending that he knew everything necessarily, but as Michelle said, he had this really inquisitive mind. And when he came to what we call the day in the life, so that opportunity to showcase his skills and that practical capacity to the hiring manager, he didn't necessarily blitz the task that he was provided. He did do really well, but they said, wow, he showed a real determination, motivation to get it right. He went away and kept trying to work it out afterwards and came back. He asked the right kind of questions. And I think a lot of that, that can go such a long way, and we'll talk about that in the next session as well. But I think, yeah, for that individual to be on now, around 100K for his first ever job, and as Michelle said, to have never worked again, blows my mind. And I'm so pleased to say that he's now been in the job for about 3 or 4 weeks, and the feedback continues to be really positive. And again, on the ground now, he's, taking initiative, and he's undergoing courses like in Splunk, and he's engaging with his peers and constantly trying to upskill and learn more, which is amazing. So, all credit to him.
Yeah, and it was that thirst for knowledge, and that he showed that he was willing to learn it, and independently if he had to. So this is the program that's coming up that Kate's going to be in charge of. I believe, Kate, you're going to start opening applications in September. And again,
yeah, it's getting really close now, which is frightening how much this year's suddenly gone. But September 1st, so easy to remember. I can see some chats that are coming through in the box as well. So for someone like Ellen's just been mentioning she hasn't had anything. This year, as Michelle said, earlier in the year, we launched obviously the New South Wales Public Service. We had a program in Canberra, Brisbane, and also Albury. But I think perhaps they were all done pre-June, because Ellen, you've mentioned you haven't seen anything since then, but definitely always check your spam box as well. But if you are on our mailing list. We are really active on our socials, particularly Facebook and LinkedIn, as a Specialisterne Australia. But you can also look up us, Natalie, Michelle and I. You know, I know for myself, I'm quite active on the LinkedIn as well. So we will advertise all these opportunities, so you will not miss out. But if you're on that mailing list, you're going to be the first to find out, and everyone gets notified of every opportunity relevant to where you're located, because you are able to, you know, apply for those programs. Even I know some people here have said they're in Canberra or Melbourne, but when I launched this Sydney one, the brilliant thing is now, thanks to COVID, it's going to be online. So if you particularly are motivated and willing, and perhaps down the track you're going to relocate to Sydney, then I still encourage you to apply and let us see your talent and your skills and so forth. But September 1, put it in the diaries, subscribe to our mailing list, and I'll also be doing a Facebook Live very shortly, I think in the next week or so, where again, similar to this, you can jump on. It'll be quite interactive. Myself and my colleague Vicky will be doing that, and we'll be trying to provide you with as much information on these opportunities, and there'll also obviously be that question and answer component as well.
Yeah, so a range of roles with the bank that are coming up. And again, connect with us on social media. Connect with either Kate is huge on on LinkedIn. She's always posting some bit of research, or but we definitely connect and follow the LinkedIn and Facebook of Specialisterne, because that's where we always place the jobs. But yeah, and join our mailing list. We definitely want to connect with you. I'm delighted to have met some of you earlier in the session. And there are opportunities out there, and there are other ways of getting a job other than a resume and interview. So we're out there to show you, and we're out there to work with you and the employers and find those opportunities and to do it differently.